Welcome to this remarkable war survival chronicle, where forgotten civilian wisdom met the collapse of armies and nations. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're listening from, and the exact time this story found you. These quiet war stories often travel farther than battles ever did. In March 1967, municipal workers demolishing a condemned boarding house in Millfield, Pennsylvania discovered something extraordinary beneath loose floorboards in the basement. 23 handwritten notes, each bearing a different signature, all addressed to the same person, Cordelia Thorne. The notes were brief, formal, written on torn paper scraps. Each contained identical phrases: heat saved, debt acknowledged, will remember. The demolition foreman, puzzled by the formality, contacted the local historical society. What emerged from that discovery would reveal one of the most practical survival stories of the home front during World War II. The boarding house at 47 Elm Street had operated continuously from 1891 until its closure in 1963. Municipal records showed it changed hands 17 times between 1920 and 1945. During the winter of 1944, it was owned and operated by one person, Cordelia Thorne, a 32-year-old widow whose husband had been killed at Normandy 7 months earlier. The property sat on the edge of Millfield's industrial district, 3 miles from the nearest trolley line, isolated by a rail yard that had been converted to military storage. The building itself stood 3 stories tall, constructed of red brick with a slate roof, designed originally as worker housing for the Pennsylvania Railroad. 12 rooms total, each measuring roughly 10 feet by 12 feet, with a common kitchen, 2 shared bathrooms, and a basement that extended the full length of the building. Historical Society volunteers spent 18 months tracking down surviving signatories from those 23 notes. 12 had died. 6 had moved beyond contact. 5 agreed to interviews. Their accounts, recorded between 1968 and 1969, describe the same sequence of events during the coldest February in Pennsylvania's recorded weather history, but what they revealed was more than survival. It was a systematic approach to resource management that turned a failing boarding house into what one former resident called the only warm place between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. Cordelia Thorne had inherited the boarding house from her deceased husband's family in October 1944. The building was already deteriorating when she took possession. The furnace, installed in 1923, consumed coal at an unsustainable rate of approximately 40 pounds per day just to maintain 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the common areas. The radiator system leaked constantly, requiring daily addition of water that rarely reached rooms above the first floor. Most rooms had single-pane windows with frames warped beyond repair, many patched with cardboard and newspaper. The roof leaked in 4 places, causing water damage that had already rendered 2 second-floor rooms uninhabitable. When coal rationing reduced civilian allocation to 60% of pre-war levels, most boarding houses in industrial Pennsylvania simply closed for the winter or operated with minimal heating that barely prevented pipes from freezing. Cordelia Thorne made a different calculation. Her husband's death benefits provided limited financial resources. The building represented her only source of income. Closing meant destitution. Operating meant solving an engineering problem that had defeated previous owners. Her solution began with mapping every heat source and heat loss point in the building. Using techniques learned from her father, a railroad maintenance supervisor, she documented airflow patterns room by room using candles and strips of paper to trace air movement. She identified that the building lost 60% of its heat through basement ventilation designed for coal storage, not human habitation. The basement contained 8 large vents, each measuring 18 inches square, designed to prevent coal dust accumulation but allowing massive heat loss during operation. The revelation was simple. The building had been designed to cool stored coal, not to warm people. Everything about its heating system worked against residential use. The furnace was sized for industrial coal storage temperature control, not domestic heating. The ventilation system prioritized coal dust removal over heat retention. The radiator placement followed coal storage patterns rather than living space optimization. Her first modification involved closing 70% of the basement ventilation using salvaged materials. She removed interior doors from unused rooms and repositioned them to create air barriers in the basement. This required dismantling door frames, cutting doors to fit irregular vent openings, and creating removable panels that could be adjusted based on weather conditions. The work took 3 weeks, performed during evening hours after her daily tenant management duties. She used automotive door hinges salvaged from a nearby junkyard, wire mesh from discarded window screens, and wood strips from shipping crates to create adjustable vent covers. The modification reduced heat loss by an estimated 40%, but created a new problem: carbon monoxide accumulation. The reduced ventilation caused dangerous gas buildup from the coal furnace, creating headaches and dizziness among residents. Her solution demonstrated remarkable practical knowledge of air circulation principles. She installed a manual ventilation system using bicycle parts and pulleys, allowing controlled air exchange without constant heat loss. The system used bicycle chains connected to adjustable dampers, operated from the first floor using a pulley system that allowed precise ventilation control based on wind conditions and furnace operation. The breakthrough came in December, when she discovered that the building's chimney system could support multiple small fires rather than one large furnace fire. The original design included 3 separate flues within the main chimney structure, designed for different sections of the building's original coal storage operation. By disconnecting the central furnace and installing small heating units in individual rooms, she could distribute heat more efficiently while reducing overall fuel consumption. The heating units were constructed from salvaged steel drums obtained from the nearby military storage facility, automotive exhaust pipes donated by a local mechanic, and improvised dampers created from sheet metal and wire. Each unit measured approximately 18 inches in diameter and 30 inches tall, with a 6-inch diameter exhaust pipe connecting to the building's existing flue system. The units could burn wood, coal, or paper with controlled airflow managed through bottom vents and top dampers. But the engineering was only part of the solution. The system's effectiveness multiplied when she implemented a resource-sharing protocol among residents. Each tenant contributed materials: newspapers from local businesses, cardboard from shipping operations, wood scraps from construction sites, fabric from clothing donations. In exchange, each received guaranteed heat 16 hours per day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The arrangement was documented in handwritten contracts, copies of which were found with the 23 notes. The contracts specified exact contributions: 10 pounds of paper materials weekly, 5 pounds of wood scraps, 2 hours of daily maintenance labor. Consequences for non-participation included reduced heating allocation and potential eviction. This wasn't charity. It was organized survival with clear expectations and accountability. Residents who couldn't contribute materials could substitute additional labor, cleaning heating units, collecting materials from designated sources, monitoring temperature and safety conditions. The system required constant coordination. Cordelia Thorne created work schedules, material collection routes, and maintenance protocols. She established relationships with local businesses to obtain waste materials. The newspaper office saved paper scraps, the lumber yard provided wood shavings, the clothing factory donated fabric remnants. She organized residents into teams responsible for different aspects of system operation: material collection, heating unit maintenance, temperature monitoring, safety inspection. Word of the boarding house's warmth spread through Pennsylvania's military transport network during the brutal February of 1945. Temperatures dropped to -18 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 consecutive days, with wind speeds reaching 35 miles per hour. The combination created wind chill conditions approaching minus 40 degrees. Soldiers traveling between bases often found themselves stranded in Millfield when trains were delayed by snow accumulation that reached 4 feet in some areas. The nearest military facility was Camp Indiantown Gap, 18 miles east of Millfield. Standard procedure required stranded personnel to wait at the rail station, an unheated wooden building measuring 30 feet by 15 feet, with broken windows and no functioning heating system. The station had been designed for summer operations when railroad traffic was heaviest. Winter heating had never been considered essential since normal train schedules didn't require extended passenger waits. Cordelia Thorne's boarding house became an unofficial refuge during these delays. Military personnel learned about the heated accommodation through word of mouth from other soldiers and railroad workers. The information spread through the military transport network as practical intelligence, reliable heat, reasonable cost, organized operation. But what few soldiers understood initially was that accommodations required participation in the heating system's operation. The 23 soldiers whose notes were discovered represented 3 separate incidents during February 1945. The first group, 8 soldiers returning from medical leave, spent 4 days at the boarding house when trains to Camp Indiantown Gap were canceled due to blizzard conditions that dumped 6 feet of snow across central Pennsylvania. The soldiers had been traveling for 36 hours when their train stopped in Millfield. Railroad officials couldn't estimate when service would resume. The soldiers initially expected simple hotel-style accommodation. Instead, they found themselves integrated into the boarding house's systematic operation. Each soldier was assigned to work teams, given material collection responsibilities, and required to maintain heating equipment according to established protocols. The arrangement shocked military personnel accustomed to hierarchical command structures. Here, a civilian widow directed soldiers in tasks essential for survival, but the system worked. The soldiers later reported that the boarding house maintained interior temperatures between 65 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, while outside temperatures remained below zero for 4 consecutive days. They witnessed civilian residents and military personnel working together to maintain heating equipment, collect materials, and monitor safety conditions. The experience challenged their assumptions about military-civilian relationships during wartime emergency conditions. The second group, 11 soldiers en route to deployment, stayed 3 days during an equipment shortage that halted military transport throughout the region. Military vehicles had broken down in extreme conditions, leaving soldiers stranded without alternative transportation. These soldiers arrived skeptical of civilian accommodations, but quickly recognized the boarding house's organizational sophistication. The heating system operated with military-like precision, scheduled maintenance, assigned responsibilities, clear accountability. The soldiers contributed materials available through military channels: shipping paper, wooden ammunition crates, fabric from military surplus. Their contributions increased the boarding house's heating efficiency by approximately 30% during their stay. In return, they received warm accommodation, regular meals, and organizational training that several soldiers later applied in military situations requiring resource management under extreme conditions. The final group, 4 soldiers traveling to medical facilities, remained 2 days when their transport vehicle broke down in sub-zero temperatures 15 miles from Millfield. The soldiers had walked through snow and freezing wind for 6 hours before reaching the town. They arrived exhausted, with early signs of hypothermia, requiring immediate warming and recovery time. Cordelia Thorne's heating system provided life-saving accommodation under conditions that could have resulted in casualties. Military regulations prohibited soldiers from seeking civilian accommodation without authorization. But stranded personnel faced a choice: violate regulations or risk hypothermia at an unheated train station. Cordelia Thorne's solution was practical rather than heroic. She charged soldiers the same rate as civilian tenants and required them to contribute to the heating material collection and system maintenance. The arrangement respected military discipline while providing essential accommodation. Military personnel had access to materials unavailable to civilians, newspapers from base libraries, shipping materials from military supply operations, wood scraps from military construction projects. Their contributions significantly enhanced the boarding house's heating capacity during critical weather conditions. But more importantly, their presence demonstrated that the system could integrate diverse groups under emergency conditions while maintaining organizational effectiveness. The heating system's success during February 1945 was documented in a report filed by Captain Morris Brennan, a transportation officer investigating delays in the Pennsylvania rail network. His report, discovered in military archives in 1968, noted that civilian accommodations in Millfield showed exceptional resourcefulness in maintaining habitable temperatures during extreme weather conditions. The report recommended studying civilian heating modifications for potential military applications in cold weather operations. Captain Brennan's investigation revealed that Cordelia Thorne's boarding house consumed 60% less coal than comparable buildings while maintaining superior heating performance. The modified system heated more space more efficiently, using available materials and organized labor rather than expensive equipment or specialized fuel. The report noted specific techniques: distributed heating sources, controlled ventilation, systematic material collection, coordinated maintenance protocols. However, Cordelia Thorne's system required constant maintenance and material gathering that tested every participant's commitment. Each tenant spent 2 hours daily collecting heating materials, cleaning heating units, and monitoring air circulation. The work was intensive, repetitive, and essential. Without daily maintenance, the system would fail within 48 hours. This wasn't a miraculous solution. It was organized labor applied to a technical problem with scientific precision and military-like discipline. The heating units required daily cleaning to prevent carbon buildup that reduced efficiency and increased fire risk. Materials required daily collection because storage space was limited and materials degraded rapidly in high humidity conditions. Temperature monitoring required hourly attention because small changes in ventilation or fuel quality could create dangerous conditions within minutes. Safety inspection required constant vigilance because improvised equipment could fail without warning. The boarding house operated successfully through the remainder of the war and continued until 1963, but its significance lay not in its duration, but in its method. When coal supplies returned to normal levels in 1946, Cordelia Thorne maintained her modified heating system. It consumed 60% less fuel than the original furnace while providing superior heat distribution. She had not just survived a crisis, she had improved upon the existing technology using available materials and systematic thinking. The post-war years revealed the system's true innovation. Other boarding houses in Pennsylvania adopted similar modifications, following techniques developed at 47 Elm Street. Municipal heating codes were updated to reflect lessons learned from distributed heating systems. Military cold weather protocols incorporated civilian resource management techniques observed during the 1945 emergency conditions. The 23 notes discovered in 1967 represent acknowledgement of a simple principle. Practical knowledge shared during crisis creates obligations that outlast the emergency. Every soldier who benefited from Cordelia Thorne's heating system understood that their survival depended on civilian resourcefulness, not military equipment. The notes were formal recognition of a debt that transcended military-civilian boundaries during a period when such boundaries could mean the difference between life and death. Post-war interviews revealed that Cordelia Thorne never spoke publicly about the soldiers she assisted. She maintained the boarding house as a business, not a charity. When asked by local newspaper reporters about her wartime experience, she consistently redirected attention to housing shortages and fuel rationing affecting all civilians. Her approach was systematic, practical, and undramatic. She had identified a problem, developed a solution, and implemented it effectively without seeking recognition or publicity. The municipal demolition in 1967 revealed one additional detail that explained the system's success. Hidden beneath the basement heating units, workers found detailed maintenance logs dating from December 1944 to September 1945. The logs recorded daily fuel consumption, temperature measurements, and maintenance tasks in precise handwriting that documented every aspect of system operation. Cordelia Thorne had not improvised her way through the winter. She had engineered a solution and monitored its performance with scientific precision. The logs showed that her modified heating system maintained average temperatures 12 degrees higher than comparable buildings while consuming 40% less fuel. The system operated at peak efficiency during February 1945, exactly when the 23 stranded soldiers required emergency shelter. This was not coincidence. It was preparation meeting opportunity under extreme conditions. The data revealed systematic improvement over time as Cordelia Thorne refined techniques, optimized material usage, and enhanced safety protocols based on careful observation and measurement. When investigators asked surviving soldiers why they wrote formal notes rather than simple thank you letters, their responses revealed the system's deeper significance. The boarding house had operated like a military unit, organized, disciplined, efficient. Every person contributed according to their capabilities. Everyone benefited according to their needs. The notes acknowledged not personal kindness, but systematic effectiveness that saved lives through practical application of available resources under extreme conditions. The formality reflected military recognition of competent leadership under combat-like conditions. Soldiers understood that Cordelia Thorne had created and maintained a system that met military standards for organization, efficiency, and effectiveness. Her civilian status didn't diminish their respect for her technical competence and leadership capabilities during a crisis that tested everyone's survival skills. Cordelia Thorne died in 1961, 2 years before the boarding house closure. The heating system she designed operated without modification until the building's final day of occupancy. No subsequent analysis found significant improvements to her basic approach: reduce heat loss, optimize fuel consumption, organize labor efficiently, maintain equipment consistently. The principles were universal. The application was specific to her circumstances, materials, and knowledge base. Her death marked the end of an era when individual innovation could transform survival outcomes through systematic thinking and organized effort. The boarding house closed because no subsequent operator could maintain the intensive management required for the modified heating system. Without Cordelia Thorne's leadership, coordination, and technical knowledge, the system that had saved 23 soldiers and countless civilians simply couldn't function. The story of 47 Elm Street demonstrates that survival during crisis depends less on individual heroism than on systematic thinking applied to immediate problems. Cordelia Thorne possessed no special training, advanced education, or exceptional resources. She had observed heating systems, understood basic principles, and applied logical modifications using available materials. When crisis arrived, preparation met opportunity. When soldiers needed shelter, capacity met need. The result was 23 lives preserved during conditions that killed hundreds of civilians across Pennsylvania that winter. Her legacy appears in municipal heating codes adopted by Millfield in 1948, based directly on modifications observed at her boarding house. It appears in military regulations updated to allow emergency civilian accommodation during transport delays. It appears in the systematic thinking that transforms crisis into manageable problems with practical solutions. Most importantly, it appears in the understanding that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary results through careful observation, logical thinking, and systematic application of available resources. The 23 notes discovered in 1967 were placed in the Pennsylvania Historical Society archive, where they remain available for research. Each note contains the same message written by different hands. A heat saved, debt acknowledged, will remember. These words represent recognition that survival often depends on quiet competence rather than dramatic action, on preparation rather than improvisation, and on systematic thinking applied to immediate problems by ordinary people under extraordinary pressure.